All right. Hey, Mike, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to talking with you about the first two deals. So you just recently got the second deal under contract, right?
Yeah, we just that one just got under contract last week. We're closing the 5th if all goes well.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah.
And so I guess we could start with your how you got into this business, how you got in, what got you interested in becoming a real estate investor,
Yeah.
and then we'll talk about you progressing to where you got those first deals. But where did you start? Where did you first get interested?
Yeah, sure. I was trying to figure out where I could start this whole thing without going too far back and all that. But, I've always been interested in construction. I've always had, that eye for it. My brother is an architect without the stamp, so I kind
Oh,
of got
cool.
my passion from him. And we tried our hand in it, maybe like 7, 8 years ago. But we did all the work in this house and really, I should say my dad did most of it. He was there pretty late and everything, but I had run into a wholesaler. I didn't even know what a wholesaler was, and we got
Huh.
this house, and then we did this whole thing. But then, fast forward 7 years, I read a book called Think and Grow Rich.
Nice.
Love that book. I listened to it 4 times in a row, just back to back to back, and just really soaked it all in. Changed my mindset. Then I found Rich Dad Poor Dad,
Hmm.
the cliche book that everybody mentions, but
Yeah.
it's true, and read that, and then kind of resurrected our company, Newbyginnings, and just really started building the brand for that and building what we wanted to do, and everything kind of snowballed from there. Just really started taking the bull by the horns and taking action. I found Bigger Pockets, and somebody on Bigger Pockets mentioned you, and I found your podcast, and I listened to 70 some episodes
Oh, wow.
within like a period of 2 months, I think, and
Nice.
but the episodes that you have, when you did that whole series from beginning to the end, really for a new person, like that's where you need to go. I mean, you had investor after investor after investor on, and every single interview that you did, you had all these questions, and you just knew how to ask the questions that a new guy wanted to hear.
Yeah, well, I
They
appreciate
wanted
that.
to know those answers. And so from there, just really started getting into it and networking and learning and all that stuff, and found a local wholesaler and got our first deal, and we're still working through that. We're hoping to get that on the market. We were trying to get it on this week, but we're probably going to look like next week, to get it
Okay.
on, and some lessons learned there, plenty of lessons.
Well, I've already got some good questions then because you've
Yeah.
got the construction background. So the first question is, how involved did you get in the rehab of that first deal? We'll get to you picking up that deal, but I want to first talk about that before we move on, because I'm sure you probably
Yeah,
had
there were
the
some
urge
hammers
to swing the
swung,
hammer.
and some, I was definitely in there, probably more than I should have been. My father as well. Really, we had some unexpected bumps. That some things that we've learned from. We had to, we ended up replacing the entire underground sewer system, and
no.
that was something we didn't see coming. And now we know it. Unfortunately, one of my buddies, Mike Brady, tipped me off to that, and fortunately we got to it before we got to the end of the road, and then all of a sudden had to tear all this stuff up. But that hit us really hard, and so we kind of had to pull back and figure out where we could do a couple of things ourselves and try to save some money. And plus, it's also a learning experience, if you can get in there and be in it more than maybe you should be on the next ones. Obviously that's not the long-term goal here. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I say that sort of jokingly. It was a little bit easier for me because I'm not a handyman. I'm not very good with all that stuff. I end up smashing my thumbs and all that kind of stuff, and it's just not pretty. But God had other purposes for me. But
Right.
and it's not to say that if that's like your passion or that's what you really enjoy, by all means do it. But
Sure.
There's a lot more money to be made if you're not doing it.
Yeah,
But-
yeah, exactly. I mean, and honestly, it helps and hurts, having that background,
Yeah.
because I know what I'm looking at. I was never a builder or a GC or anything like that. I worked for a roofer, and then went into construction consulting. So I was doing inspections for homes. And now I run our multifamily and commercial division. So I'm very detail oriented, and I know code, and I know what to look for, but I don't know necessarily how to get it to that point. And so that was some of our hangups with this one.
I see.
I don't know the scheduling. I don't know how to get it to this. I know what it should look like. I know what should and shouldn't be there. And that's what can kind of hurt and help. But
yeah. Well, I'm sure that the end product ends up looking really, really nice.
Certainly.
You shared photos on the Flip Pilot group, didn't you?
I've done some. I don't think I've done the finals on Flip Pilot yet. We've had some sneak peeks, through like our Instagram account and stuff like that, but haven't actually posted the finals. We'll definitely do that next week, though.
Oh, cool. Be looking forward to that. And if anybody listening out there is not a part of the Flip Pilot Facebook group, just go to flippilot.com and get an invitation to join that private group, and be able to see pictures of Mike's first flip being completed that's going on the market. Hopefully, you said next week, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We actually had pictures scheduled for tomorrow, and we've had to cancel them.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so what did you guys stage it?
No, that was one of the things we planned to do. We'll do some light staging, not with all kinds of furniture and stuff. We'll definitely, place a few decorations here and there, and towels and this and that, and some plants and stuff. But
and you can do it on a pretty decent budget. And I know Melissa has talked about it before, and I think we have a blog post on Flipping Junkie about staging and where she goes to get some of the furniture. But everything's been done on the super cheap. And really buying that staging furniture, if you're going to be doing several rehabs and selling retail, that investment, it's an investment. And being able to move that furniture from house to house is really a nice thing to have, especially when you own all of it. But
yeah, certainly.
Of course, we've had a whole house of staging furniture stolen before, too.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, I think I've shared this story before, but the neighbor had noticed the garage door open and the refrigerator hanging half out of the door from the garage into the house. And so called us, and because we had the sign out front for sale.
Yeah.
We went over there. They stole the towels. They stole the pictures off the walls, the couch.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, they loved the way it looked. So it was like shopping at IKEA or something. That it was already...
Yeah, you just take it as a compliment, right?
Right. Well, yeah, that's what Melissa did. But it was still like, man, really? Are you serious?
That's amazing.
But at least no damage was done to the house. So that was, other than the back door being pried open. But
yeah, because usually they drag the cooktop across the whole wood floors, and
Yeah, nightmare. So, but okay, let's talk about then. So whenever you started studying, do you remember how much time it took from when you said, this is something I want to learn more about, to the point where you've got this deal from this wholesaler? How much time was that, do you think?
Yeah, and I think it was probably about 6 to 8 months until, I actually said, okay, let's go. I want to find a wholesaler, and get into this. For me, that felt like the easiest way to get in for the least amount of money. Definitely long term, we definitely want to do direct to seller marketing, but that was about the time. It was 6 to 8 months, and I probably could have jumped sooner, but I really am the type of person, I wanted to get a good foundation, a good knowledge base, before I jumped in, and went head first. So it's about that time.
It's good to hear that, because I think that's the typical time frame for most people. I think is, if they keep going. And that amount of time seems like a lot of time. Mm-hmm. And so many people give up before that amount of time. And I think our first deal, it was 6 or 9 months.
Yeah.
Before we had that. And I remember driving around with my father, driving for dollars, and telling him, this doesn't work in San Antonio like it does where you are.
Oh,
I mean, I was the one saying those things. And I still remember vividly, and him trying to convince me otherwise.
Yeah.
And, and it's almost like as soon as I decided to believe him was when things started to come around, and I started to see. You see what you believe, right? Like,
Right.
and,
Oh yeah.
And so, what kinds of things did you guys do? Were you actively looking for the deals, and how did you come across this one that you bought from the wholesaler?
Yeah, so as soon as I was like, okay, let's do this, I was actually on my Instagram account and saw somebody posting houses deals. I was actually trying to connect, with different people and network and whatnot. And I had messaged him on Instagram, and then he connected me with one of his other team members. And I went and met that guy for lunch, or not for lunch, for Starbucks, one of my favorite places. And we had coffee and talked about the different deals that they've got. And he said they push out 4 or 5 a day sometimes.
Oh, wow.
They are
All their own, or from other people?
Yeah, they some of their own and some from other wholesalers that go through them, just because they've got a wide range, a wide buyers list. And so it was through Instagram, and then setting up with him, and then we walked a couple of houses, and then I think it was the third one, that we were like, let's do it. The numbers made sense to us. And so we bit on that third one. So, but it was really quick. It was probably, I want to say 2 weeks max, maybe 3,
wow.
Since talking with him.
Mm-hmm. No, that's awesome. And it's a great way to get started without having, much outlay in the form of marketing. Cause that marketing, until you're ready to commit to it and put the investment into it,
Right.
I'm glad you didn't do that right away if you weren't ready to do it. I don't know if you were or not, but
Right.
I just did the last episode on the podcast, episode 90. This is episode 91. Episode 90 is all about working with wholesalers, so it's kind of interesting how that worked out. So.
Yeah, and I just listened to that one. Chance Houses, I think is how you say that. Hilarious last name for the business season. I think y'all talked about that too. That's awesome. And I've seen him on Flip Pilot, and we were actually supposed to connect and just hadn't got together yet. He lives just a city over from me, I believe. So he's really close. So it was neat to hear him on the podcast for sure. But yeah, the wholesaling aspect just seemed like, because right now, I've got a full-time job. And it's 40, 50 hours a week. My wife has a full-time job. She's a nurse. She works 14-hour days, and so we've got two little ones. We've got a 7-month-old and a 2.5-year-old, and we got 2 dogs, 2 cats. I mean, we've got this brand new family.
So you've got 3 full-time
and here we
jobs
are trying
now.
to get, what's that?
So now you got 3 full-time jobs.
Yeah, exactly. So, we don't have time. We're still trying to figure out how to wrangle in 2 kids, and manage all that with 2 full-time jobs. And then we toss this on top of it. So it just seemed like an easy way in. And if the numbers make sense, why not? If they make sense for what you want your end goal to be, I don't see why not.
Okay. So here's a good question regarding the numbers making sense, because as I mentioned in the last episode, there's this perception of the wholesale deals, there not being much meat on the bone, and that it's kind of hard to get a good deal through them. How did you determine that the numbers did make sense for the deal? How did you do that? Just for other people wondering that, so that they can determine that themselves as well.
Yeah, certainly. There's the golden rule of the 70% rule, right? In our market, that you're going to be tough doing that with a wholesaler. So, you can go up to 80, 85%, sometimes. And doing a rental, you might even go a little higher. But for a flip, that was kind of our threshold, 80 to 85% of ARV minus repairs. And so that was kind of our rule. There's lots of different calculators out there. Bigger Pockets has a free calculator. You can just Google some of them. I made up my own Excel spreadsheet based on some of those, just so I could have it really readily available, and just kind of put my own market numbers in there and just quick and dirty numbers. And so I can put in the costs associated with it and figure out whether or not it works for us.
Oh, nice. Would you mind sharing that?
Yeah, I can definitely share that.
Oh, cool.
Hopefully it's correct, right?
Well, we'll put a disclaimer or something.
Yeah, there you go.
Everybody should, like modify it to fit your market and your purchasing and investment criteria. Obviously, it's just for educational purposes and not for any business advice or decisions.
Yeah, I don't want people calling me and saying, "Hey, you said this would work," and here I am.
Yeah, so that'd be cool if you could send that over. We can put it on the show notes page. flippingjunkie.com/91 will be the show notes page. To listen to this episode, download this episode, and then also see the other things. And we'll link to your website as well.
Great.
That you've got set up and help you out with that. So what are some of the things that came up from the purchase of the property? I mean, was this was the first deal that you did? How did you get the contract assigned to you from the wholesaler, or did you guys double close?
It was a double close. This one actually went through two wholesalers. So it's, one person took a chunk, the next person took a chunk, and there was still meat left, If we wouldn't have run into a couple of unforeseen things, we'd be really doing just fine with it. But it really, honestly, out of the gate, it was rough. It was supposed to be vacant when we got it. It wasn't. The sellers actually were still there 3 or 4 days after we closed. And fantastic people, super nice. We were okay with it. We still had some homework to do as far as getting trades in there and figuring out. We had foundation work that we know we needed done. And we were just still coming up with our plan, because the way this wholesaler works is they put out the deal. The showing is the next day if it has somebody occupied in it, and then you have anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour to look at it, and then you put in a blind bid right afterwards, and the bids are taken in, and the highest bidder wins. So you don't have a whole lot of time to come up with a plan for the house. So getting in there, as quick as possible and coming up with your design choices and, what you're going to do with the whole thing. That's kind of what we were doing in those first few days. It would have been nice if they were out. They left a lot of stuff behind too, not as much as much more than we thought they were going to be leaving behind. So that was another unforeseen thing. We filled up a 30-yard dumpster with their stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But, all that said, this is a people business, right? Once it all boils down to it. And that's ultimately why we are also in this. We want to help people. We want to solve people's problems. We want to be a sounding board, if needed. We want to get them to the next stage of life, and that's where our name comes from, Newbyginnings. It's a play on our last name, but we're creating a new beginning for people, and that's really what I love that. To do.
As you guys, I'm excited for you as you start to do the marketing direct to seller, because it's a genuine message, and you can tell you're not just saying that just to try to get more gain out of it. Like, that's really what you guys are all about, and I think it comes through, and I think it will in your marketing as well as.
Good deal.
So I'm excited to see you guys start to do that and find success in that as well.
Yeah, good deal. Thank you.
Yeah.
So they, and then talking with the sister, so again, you never know where your next deal is going to come from, and the sister was so elated that we bought her sister's house. I mean, she was head over heels. She was like, I prayed for somebody like you guys to come in here and buy this house, and God answered the call, and here you are. And then lo and behold, hey, actually, I'm going to be selling my house at the end of the year, and I'd like you guys to look at it.
Nice.
I mean, it's just, it was amazing. And she's going to write us a testimonial,
Awesome.
and so she said such kind words. I got my picture with her, and everything, and still in contact with her.
So that's deal number 2?
Yeah, no, it's not, but maybe it'll be 5. I'm trying to go for 5 before the end of the year. We'll see if it happens.
But that's the second deal. That's the one you guys are going to try to close Or in the process of, you just put under contract recently, right?
No, the second one's that's a different one.
Oh, okay.
Yep, it's actually through the same wholesaler too.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Oh, I see. So that will be later on. So
Yeah, so that one will be later on. She's not ready to sell
I see,
till
okay.
I think end of this year, beginning of next, or something.
yeah, she's willing to do a testimonial. Sounds like she'd probably be willing to do a video testimonial. Go even further if you could get one of those. Just have the cell phone and
Yeah.
have somebody.
Yeah,
hold
that'd be
it.
good. I've seen some of those on your site, and I definitely saw that. And I've actually made myself a note to go back and write down the questions that you asked, because they were really good questions. So, but yeah, those can do a lot for your business,
Yeah. And for people that haven't seen those, just real quick, it's basically about, how were you feeling when you were looking for somebody to buy your house? What kind of situation were you in?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. This isn't, I guess, the proper thing for that. I'm starting to even forget what we were asking. But it's like, basically just asking them how the whole process went. Like where they were, what they thought was going to happen, how did everything happen, how did we perform for them? So.
Right. Yeah. Just connecting with them, that can go a really long way. The next guy that comes in might just want to buy the house, and they may not be connecting with them, and so that can really set you apart.
Yeah. It's not always about the amount that you're willing to offer them. And I'm not sure if it was somebody I was talking to or if it was an episode that we did where he was talking about people's decisions that they make. They make decisions two ways, and usually the real reason why they made a decision was emotional. And there's always a logical reason that they tell everybody and even tell themselves as to why they made that decision, but almost always it's because of the emotional reason.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason why they're willing to take an offer that's lower than somebody else's, because they had that connection with you, or somebody else, or you just we're the right people for them. So.
Right. Yep.
So I want to find out more about any problems that came up with. So they were in a couple, 3 or 4 days later, and then you had the sewer problem.
So the sewer problem, kind of during that front period, I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he's like, I used to live in that area, and everything's cast iron pipe. If you've got foundation problems, you're going to have plumbing problems. He's like, I hate to break this news to you, but be happy I told you now rather than later, and it is what it is, and I was praying and crossing my fingers that, maybe somehow we weren't going to have the issue, but we ended up doing, the house didn't have a clean out either, because it was a 1959 house.
Oh, wow.
And so we had to have a clean out installed to even do a test.
Right.
So that was the first $1,500 or so, to put that in. And then you could do a test another $600 or whatever,
And that's
so
a
they
static test, right, to see if it holds. Yeah.
Correct. Yes. Yep. So they'll put the test ball in the clean out, and then they'll fill everything with water, and then see if it holds for an hour or so. And they did that, and it didn't work. So it failed immediately. I think it was like 5 minutes into it. And so then they did some what's called isolated testing. So we had an option. We could either just say, forget it, let's just replace the whole thing, or we could try and do some isolated testing. And so we did some isolated testing. They tried to go down 3 different stacks, and each one they couldn't get down. So they were broken off, right at the elbow there into the house.
Oh, wow.
And so they tried 3 different spots, and they were like, what do you want to do? And at that point, I said, let's just call it, and we'll replace the whole thing, And so that was $17,000.
Wow.
So, ooh. And we had been through a few different companies, but one tip I would give people is make sure that you're going either through another investor that's used somebody, or a recommendation of sorts. If you're really hard up and nobody has anybody, which I would really doubt, with the amount of networking that can be done these days, or pages you can get on and people you can talk to, just go by somebody that's recommended. And so we went through a couple different ones, and went with this company. Maybe we could have gotten it cheaper, but at some point, you've got to draw the line and move forward, right? So.
Yeah, and so a lot of that was basically from when you raised the foundation, it pulled, so the pipes that were stuck below it didn't come
Right.
up. Instead, they just disjointed. Right, is what happened.
Yeah, so
And being cast iron, I guess
a
probably.
cast iron pipe is rated for 30 years. They've seen some go to 100, but it's in ideal conditions, and Texas soil is not ideal conditions. If you have any type of little drainage issue, it just adds to the foundation problems. I mean, you've got foundation problems in a 15-year-old house, sometimes around here, and so yeah, it was already deteriorating from the bad drainage. And so when they move everything, just like you said, it just started crumbling.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's actually caused us this year. Melissa said no more foundation problem houses because of that exact thing. Like we had never had so many in a row that required the exact same thing, and it's like no more.
Right.
No more. Let's get more leads in, more deals in, and do the ones that don't require that and wholesale the rest. And
right. That's what I say, because I mean, it seems like every other one that we come across has foundation issues. I think you're hard pressed to do one in Texas without foundation issues, but I'm sure they're out there.
So it's mostly, so you guys have clay-like soil up there too, where it expands a lot with rain and then dries out and really contracts a lot.
Yeah. It's temperamental for sure.
Yeah, certain neighborhoods around here, you drive through and it's like the road's like a roller coaster, and you're like, oh, these houses have problems.
Oh yeah, it's the same way here. The areas where you've got issues for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay,
we're
so you
still learning those.
had that, and then any other issues with any subs or anything like that, or anything else that you've learned through that process of getting this one done?
Yeah, we were advised against this. I think it's been said by numerous people, but our neighbor is a GC. And so we decided to use him on this job. We're great friends. We're like family almost, really. They're great people. He's detail oriented, and he's a past home builder, and he does some custom work now. And so we thought it was a perfect fit. I thought, well, it kind of makes sense. He's right here. Let's bring him in the loop and see what we can do together, and so that's kind of where it went. And so he brought in a lot of trades. He got us acclimated to the building side of things, and gave us a lot of knowledge. We were able to ask a lot of questions, and things like that. What comes before what, and how do you put this here and this and that,
and that's super important. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, he brought, I want to preface this right, because he brought us a lot of good information, and the whole front end of things was really good, and he brought us trades and knowledge and all of that. But things went on, and we didn't quite set the expectation of roles necessarily right up front. My wife and I are very detail oriented, and so we will... we want to make sure things are done right and things are caught and this and that. And so we just started not seeing eye to eye on some things, and thought he should have caught this thing and we should have caught this thing, and so it kind of went back and forth a little bit. And so to salvage the relationship, we just stepped back and said, let's just go back to being friends and neighbors, and you can ask me questions, and we'll do it this way, And
that's good. That's good that you guys, you didn't let it deteriorate and get to a point where you couldn't do that.
Exactly. So, just what's the takeaway from that? Set the expectations up front with your GC, with your trades. Here's what we need. Here's what we're looking for. We want every nook and cranny taken care of. We need you out on the site every other day, whatever it is. Just set some expectations up front of what you're going to be, looking for, so you don't get down the road and be upset.
Yeah, because it's tempting when you don't know what you need to just say, yeah, let's get going. How much? And you're going to do everything, and you leave it vague.
Right.
And I got to tell you, I still struggle with the whole setting expectations thing. And as we've grown the flipping business, and more so the software business, because that one, we've grown by so many more people with that's still a problem where, it's like, I just want to, like, come on, okay, you can do all this, it's going to be awesome, and this and that,
Yeah.
but not setting expectations. And then, we have issues where, they're not sure what they were supposed to have done. It's because it wasn't like the expectations hadn't been set, and it's
Right.
I mean, that's really, really big. And and I say all that because I just want everybody to understand that's not just a minor thing in passing that you maybe should think about. It's an absolute whenever you're working with anybody on anything, is making sure everybody knows what their role is, down to the smallest detail.
Yeah, exactly. And so what we've learned from that going into this next one, so he actually brought another guy in that he actually uses on some of his other jobs. And so we almost kind of had two GCs, in this one. And so one of the problems we had was communication. So, we thought he was relaying the information that we gave to him to the other guy. And so when I would tell him something, I thought it was going all the way through, and he thought I was telling, the other guy. And so there was communication. So, issues. And so you gotta be in tune with that and figure out a way, and who's going to, who reports to who, or who's going to tell who this. So anyways, we're still working with the other guy, Eli, and what we want to do before we get into this next one is go out to dinner, have dinner together, set the stage. What are we going to be expecting? How is this next one going to look differently from this one? Here's how we're going to communicate. Here's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Here's what we expect from you. And so on and so forth. And
Yeah,
really
and that perfect example of that is how you're going to communicate, and that is whenever we have a change order or we want to do something, we're going to tell this person, and then the other guy will say, well, I'll need to know about that too, and it's all discussed so that there's a plan and who's reporting to who and who needs to hear each message about whatever thing that they're handling.
Right.
So almost like an organizational chart, even though you're just working together on a job and not on as a company.
Sure. Right. Yeah, I just finished the E-Myth by Michael Gerber a little bit ago. And he talks about, even though you've got, one or two or three people in your organization now, lay all those positions out on the table, and what are the descriptions of each of those positions, and what are the tasks, and own it. You take this one, you take this one, you take that one. And then as your company grows, you can start giving those roles to other people. But in the beginning, you at least know who's responsible for what.
And right now, it's, Mike Newby, Mike Newby, Mike Newby, Mike Newby in all the boxes.
Well, I don't want to say that.
Well,
my wife, Sarah,
well, not all of them.
She does quite a bit, too. So I don't want to take her
you guys
credit
both
away.
Splitting it all up. Still a lot of boxes.
And my dad, he's done a ton too. It's really a family affair at this point. But
no, that's awesome, and that's another very good point, and it makes it a lot easier, right? With both people on board and being excited about it and working together on it.
Yeah.
And do you do what I do and have her good ideas and say, well, I don't know, and then later say the same thing and act like it was your idea?
Well, I try to give her credit, but I definitely do that. I'll say one thing. Well, I don't know about that, and then it'll get done, and I'm like, yeah, that looks really good. Oh,
that's awesome. Along the lines of the E-Myth, have you read that book Traction?
I have not, and I keep hearing it.
You should read it. And my friend Andy McFarland up in Utah recommended that to me, and it's awesome. It's an incredible book, and it helps walk through that same sort of thing. I mean, a little bit more about the process of doing that. Even if you're not ready to grow your business like that, to have the plan of what that looks like so you understand all your roles.
Right.
And I think a big thing for us that we've learned, and I've heard other people talk about, is the tendency is to hire somebody and expect them to do 20 things when it really should be a focus of one thing. And that's kind of hard to understand how to do, but if they should maybe be part-time or something, but it's really good to try to do that instead of just hire somebody and expect them to take over everything.
Sure. Yeah, because otherwise they can't get really good at that thing, and
Mm-hmm.
they're so spread thin. They can do all these things, but they're not great at them.
Yeah.
Right? They probably could be if they focused.
Yeah, and that way they're working towards on their what they're strong with, and not doing other things that they're not enjoying. That's affecting all of their work.
Sure.
But so yeah, it's a great book for anybody listening if you haven't gotten that book too. So E-Myth and then Traction as well.
Yeah.
All right, so awesome. So you had setting those expectations, and then next time with the contractors planning out how all of it's going to work. Did you have an agreement, a written agreement for the scope of work and draw schedules and all of those kinds of things?
So we didn't on this one. We didn't at first because it started out with our neighbor and we went that route, and it was, let's just see how this goes, and we trusted the relationship and the situation. Now, we did have a scope of work that was written. It wasn't signed by all parties, but we definitely wrote down, here's what's happening in this room, here's what's happening in this room, in this room, in this room, and so on and so forth. And we created that scope of work, and that went on the walls, at the house. So here's what's happening in each of these rooms. But as you know, things come up and things kind of have to change sometimes, and so, or you run into a pipe in this wall and so you can't cut it back as far, or, now we have to do the whole plumbing, so let's move the washer from this wall to this wall because it just makes more sense, So different things came up like that, and that's where that communication, really was key. But no, there wasn't a agreement that was written out, or a draw schedule, but it's definitely something that we're going to look at for the next one, just because of how this unfolded.
Mm-hmm.
So lesson learned.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because you listen to all this training and podcasts and they tell you these things and you're like, oh yeah, but if I do it, it'll be different, and no,
Yeah.
but I guess people are human, and sometimes you've just got to do it yourself and
Yeah.
learn from it. But, if you can learn from other people's mistakes, that's a big thing.
Yeah, that's why I was like, when we were talking before we started recording, saying that first one, no matter what you make on the first one, it's probably one of the most valuable that you do.
Right.
In terms, like you said, of education.
Yes.
And, that can be, it doesn't mean go out and get a super slim deal, lose money, but learn a lot. If you can avoid that. And not saying that you did, but for other people listening, that's,
Yeah.
But I mean, that's really the big thing. You find out what you don't fully understand, or maybe respect, I guess, what you know
Sure.
about things once you go through it and have the experience.
Right. Exactly. Those things that you learn start coming and you're like, oh yeah, that's what they meant by that.
That's why that would have been helpful.
Yeah, that's why that would have worked right there. And then this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. Well, and then the good thing is understanding too that, like even after, 10 years, 14 years of flipping hundreds of houses, you're still always learning.
Yeah.
On each one might teach you something new, and always being open to that.
Definitely.
It's sort of like after every flight, you're supposed to have like a debrief when you go flying, and it's like mistake or something that I make on every flight, no matter how small. Stop and acknowledge that and think about that. And it's amazing
Right.
It still happens after hundreds and hundreds of flights. Like there's something that I could have done better. You know what I mean? And looking at that. Did you guys spend a lot of time? I guess you probably did with your wife, because you're planning the second one to take care of all the things that and change things that you ran into on the first one, so you don't run into on the second one.
Yeah. So one thing we looked for on this next one's a pier and beam house, so a lot less chance of the sewer issue. So that was one thing we looked at. We definitely did not want to do that again on the next one. That hurt. But so we were looking for things like that. And we're just going to do a lot more planning, on the front end of this. And we've kind of got a game plan for what we want to do with this one. My brother's going to some of these houses in Dallas, and they're a little bit older, so this next one's a 1960s house as well. The other one was 1959. This one's 1960, but they're real tight. They've got fur downs. The rooms are small. They don't have enough bathrooms. All these things are working against you, and so you almost have to tear down a wall or two, or something like that, to really get to that upper price point that you're trying to get to. And so we want to plan that out a little bit better in this one, and actually get a plan. My brother's going to put together one of those, for us, and have that to hand to the GC. Here's how this needs to look. Here's where this is going. This is going. This is going. And then write out the scope the same way. So
nice. And how did this one come? Did you mention how you got the second one? Was that from a wholesaler as well?
Yeah, so this one's also from a wholesaler. It's actually from the same wholesaler. So
very cool.
Yeah. They send us, I couldn't even tell you how many a week, and in addition to the countless number of other wholesalers lists that I've started to get on, they make it pretty easy. There's usually 2 or 3 sets of people going to these showings, and you walk through it. I know you've got a short amount of time to make a decision, but if you do your due diligence up front, if the showing's the next day, do all your due diligence the prior to, then unless you walk through the house and find something that wow, that's going to cost us 10, 15 grand to fix, we didn't see that, then you pretty much know that you can offer, what you need to offer to get it at the price you need it, and make the deal work for you. So
great. And what are your plans? Have you guys started planning what kind of marketing direct to sellers that you guys are going to start doing?
We haven't yet. We've talked about driving for dollars and doing that for sure. I think in this area would be good because Dallas is such a hot market, and everybody's got the lists, and every single motivated seller has probably 6 or 7 cards sitting on their nightstand or whatnot, I would think. So I would just think people aren't doing door knocking as much anymore, from what I've heard. That driving for dollars and door knocking might be one of the ways we go to try to get ahead of the game.
I think that's a good way. And I've always loved the driving for dollars because you get to understand the whole area and all the different areas,
right,
ins and outs, where something changes when you go over railroad tracks and it's a completely different area. I mean,
sure.
you get to know every little place within your city and see where things are starting to happen and improve, right, and stuff like that. But yeah, right, definitely in going around and leaving your card at all of those houses, writing down the address, and
sure,
talking to the neighbors when it's a definitely vacant house, looks
right,
like it's been vacant for a while, talking to those neighbors and saying, hey, do you know where they live? Do you know how to get a hold of them? Here's my card in case they come here. Could you give it to them? That kind of thing.
That's good. Yeah. A big thing I think right now, just because of the minimal amount of time, and a lot of new people are starting out with little time, and so for me, it's networking. That's a big thing. Our neighbor, actually, one of his family members is looking to sell their property,
nice,
and so that just, putting your name out there, telling people what you do, can really go a long way. Don't be shy about that. Tell your family members, tell your friends, tell your church, tell whomever, what you're doing, and you never know where the next deal is going to come from, and so for us, we've got to get to a point, the end goal, and hopefully my company isn't going to listen to this podcast that I work for now, but eventually I will go full time with this, and that's my passion, and hopefully they see that. I feel like we've been called to do something big in ourselves, and I think that's going to be through real estate, that we can help the most people. And so eventually, I think I'm getting off track. I don't know where I was going with that.
No, it's good. No,
Interesting.
I like that you were talking. Talking about people not having a whole lot of time, and I meant to ask you that earlier
Yes.
too. With the new family, and the young kids, and both you and your wife working this business together and having full-time jobs.
Right.
How did you manage the rehab and the running of things? How did you do that?
Yeah, so it was done, and that's exactly where I was going with it, was minimal amount of time. So it was done during lunches. I'd run down there to the property, check on things, make calls, whatever it was, make a call on my way down there, make a call on my way back, and then evenings, it was after the house goes to sleep, which is sometimes 9 o'clock for us, 9:30, we will put a little bit of time, an hour or two into the business, at the end of the day. And that's how it was managed, just where we can fit it in.
Did you ever begrudgingly do those things, like during lunch and in the evenings? Did you ever, sigh real deep and say, oh, I got to do this? Was it like that, or was it different?
No, it's more, I wish I could be doing this more. I wish I could take a longer lunch, whatever, you know what I mean? I wish I had the freedom to do more and put more focus, not just on this rehab,
Right.
I could focus more on the next one, or focus more on marketing, or whatever it is, that needs the focus, that isn't getting it right now, to get this business moving quicker than it is. But you do what you can, and so that's where I was going with it. And so I think through networking and through wholesalers and getting our foot in the door that way, because we don't have a lot of time, is a good way to start off, and then eventually we can move into some other things. I think wholesaling, getting from wholesalers, is always going to be part of our deal inflow. There's a lot of them here in Dallas, and if you can take advantage of that, why not?
For sure.
So your last episode was so timely, because I was like, that's exactly what I'm thinking, so.
No, it's good.
No.
Yeah, and I really honestly think that the starting out part-time is really helpful. I think it forces you to focus on the things that do the most for you and get you furthest along, just because you have to.
Right.
You don't waste time on things that don't produce, or you just don't have the time to do.
Right.
And, when you go full-time, you're going to find it strange. You're not going to know what to do with the time, because you managed to do it before part-time.
Just go out and hang in my office parking lot and be like, okay, I'm here. This feels a little better. No.
Well, that's really cool. I'm really glad for you guys' success in getting the first deal and second deal, and then with another one in the pipeline for later in the year.
Yeah.
And doing well. So, any last words of wisdom or anything for anybody listening?
I think one thing, it can be tough. It can take a lot of work getting off the ground, and it can really stretch you. My wife and I, she does all the design stuff and has done all of that for this house, and she can't do that on the days that she works, because she is just dog tired when she gets home. Plus, being a mother of 2 young kids, she works really hard, and so she's tired. And I get tired as well, and it can get tough. But I think keeping your attitude and keeping your eye on the prize, is a really big deal. One thing that I've always, my pastors has said this, but your attitude is the hinge upon which the door to your destiny swings. And it's just, if you can really live by that, your attitude is almost the only thing that you can control in life, really. And so if you can just take that and keep your attitude right and keep your eye on the prize, you'll get there.
I like that. That's big. Yep. Yeah, and it covers everything.
Yeah, right.
That's nice.
Yeah.
For anybody listening that wants to get a hold of you, do you have a way for people to reach you that you recommend that they
sure.
find you?
So we're on most of the social medias. So we'd love it if you came and followed us on Instagram. It's Newbyginnings Homes, Newbyginnings. We're on Twitter as well, but if you just want to contact me directly, email is mike@newbeginnings.com, and that'd be the best way to get a hold of me there.
All right, and we'll include those on the show notes page too if you were driving and couldn't write that down and want to get a hold of Mike. It'll be on flippingjunkie.com/91, and you can get the links. We'll put a link to Instagram and to your Twitter profile and the email. Maybe not the email. I might leave that off or just change it a little bit so you don't get spammed from
Sure, I appreciate that.
spiders crawling the internet and grabbing your email address. But thanks a lot, Mike. I really enjoyed talking with you, and we're not too far from each other either, so I'd like to extend an offer to you. If you're ever down in San Antonio, reach out to me and let's get together. And
yeah, likewise here. If you're ever up in Dallas, let me know. And
awesome.
Really, I just thank you for your time and commitment to this industry. And you've really helped us get off the ground a great deal. You're a faraway mentor for us.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate everything you've done for us.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, great. Well, we'll be in touch. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.